Hello everyone and welcome again to today's presentation. My name is Jennifer Peltier and I'm the Education Coordinator with Parks and Recreation Ontario. I'm also your technical host for today. So just quickly before we begin today's presentation, I want to go through a few logistical items. First, let's do a quick audio check. So at the top of your screen, you're going to see a little person icon. If you click on this, it'll give you the option to raise your hand. If you select that right now, it'll let me know that you can hear me. Perfect. Looks like everybody's on board. Great. So if you click on that again, it'll take away your status and lower your hand. So throughout the presentation, the presenters may ask you to do this as well. So now you're familiar with this process. Fantastic. Let's talk about a few other items. So today's presentation does have an attachment to it. There's a file, a PDF file, the top right-hand corner of your screen. At any point in today's presentation, you can select this file and click to download. This is a resource for you to use and will also be emailed to you as an attachment after today's presentation. Also throughout the presentation, there will be poll questions in order to engage the audience. So when the presenter cues the poll, you'll see it appear on your screen. Simply select your response and answer and we'll be able to see those live in person. Also throughout the presentation, if you have any questions at all for myself or for the presenters, please feel free to enter them into the chat pod located to the right of your screen. At any point throughout the presentation, we'll be able to see these come through, and your name will be next to them as well. Lastly, this is a recorded session, so today's webinar will be made available afterwards. The entire session will be posted on the Parks and Recreation Ontario website. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jennifer Cowie-Bonney onto the line. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. So we're really pleased to be here today to present the evaluation of the City of Mississauga's Active Assist Fee Assistance Program for individuals in low income. We're really pleased with the turnout today as well. You can see on the side we've got about 46 people. And from what we understand from the registration list, we have colleagues from all across Ontario, also some out of province, Saskatchewan and Alberta. And most of our people are representing provincial and municipal government and non-government organizations. So really welcome to everybody and thanks for joining. Before we begin, I just want to take a brief moment to introduce our presentation and research team. So we have Dr. Catherine Tamminen, and she is an assistant professor in the Faculty of Kinesiology and Physical Education at the University of Toronto. Her teaching and research focus on youth sport and physical activity and also on stress and coping in sport. One of the aims of her research program is to promote long-term participation in sport and physical activity among youth in Canada, and she is the lead investigator on this project. We also have on the line Christina Zietsma. She's worked with the City of Mississauga for over 20 years in various roles, and currently she's the manager of the Customer Service Center where she oversees the administration of the Active Assist program. And me, I'm Jennifer Cowie-Bonney. I'm the Manager of Community and Neighborhood Development for the City of Mississauga, a role I've had for about 2 years. And prior to this, I was the CEO for Active Healthy Kids Canada, and I was involved in the national and international report card on physical activity for children and youth, and also the Global Summit for Physical Activity in Children and Youth. And it's there that I have a very keen interest in looking at evidence-based solutions to increase access and participation in physical activity and recreation. So over the next hour or so, we will go over basically to give you a sense of the project. So what is Active Assist and our program and the research project that we conducted and what we found in terms of results. We'll also give you a sense of the challenges and learnings that we've had from implementing this program over the past 5 years, recommendations and future directions for future programming, but also key learnings to support others in evaluating programs like this. So just a bit about Mississauga before we get started. For those who aren't familiar, we are the 6th largest city in Canada with a population hovering around 775,000. We are one of the most diverse cities in the world, diverse in the biggest sense. From a cultural sense, we welcome newcomers from all over the world every year. And just as an example of scope, our Peel District School Board Welcome Center welcomes about 5,000 students per year from countries all over the world. We're very diverse in terms of age. Our older adult population is definitely on the rise, currently at over 20% of our population. And also with most large cities, our economic diversity is also very great. 22% of Mississauga households are in low income. So of course, access and inclusion is very top of mind when it comes to the delivery of not only recreation, but all sorts of city services. terms of the Active Assist program, this is a fee assistance program that was launched in 2009, and it was designed to help individuals and families in low income participate in programming, recreation, cultural programming with the city. So an individual would receive a $275 credit per year. So this is if it was a family, they would get $275 per family member per year. They have 1 year to redeem this credit, and they have an opportunity to renew that on an annual basis. The way that it is validated is through in-person verification of income, and we do use the low-income cutoff available for, I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with that. So we use the same information that most do. And really what they do is they receive a credit on their account. And so in this case, they can shop, they can redeem all sorts of variety of programs and services at their interest. On their own time. There are some limited exclusions, but for the most part, once they're in the system, they are a client just like anyone else. The other interesting thing to talk about just before I get to this next slide is just around from a more behind-the-scenes administration of this, because I think on the surface everybody can find out this information. But one of the things that is pretty unique about the way that it is administered is that the city identifies capacity to accommodate non-payment registrations within our existing budget and program offering. And so then this capacity is approved by council on an annual basis, and changes are made as needed. When we launched the program in 2009, we had 2,500 people apply, and currently we're sitting at 12,500. So it's definitely an interesting financial model behind it as well. This is one of the initiatives that we have around our goals to increase access and inclusion. So everybody, I'm assuming at this point, is very familiar with the Framework for Recreation in Canada. It's got a number of different goals here. One of the key goals here is around inclusion and access to recreation for populations that face constraints to participation. So definitely in this case, we're talking about financial constraints. And Active Assist is just one example of the various things that we and probably many municipalities across the country do to increase access and inclusion. So some of the other examples here: free after-school programming for children, youth ages 10 to 18. We have free programming in the summer, drop-ins for 6 to 12-year-olds through our Play in the Park program. We have some innovative approaches around 12 to 14-year-olds where we provide free transit and swimming across the city for July and August. We have agreements with our child care providers and the region of Peel to allow families to use their child care subsidies towards recreation programs. And we also provide free daytime space for older adult community groups to do very low cost or no cost programming. So again, a basket of services that we offer with respect to being able to enhance access and inclusion. For the City of Mississauga residents also have other financial tools to support their participation in recreation and sport, and these are the tools that most people in Canada have access to. We do know that there has been some sort of work around tax credits at both the federal and provincial level, the Children's Fitness Tax Credit. There's also national subsidy programs that are available to Canadian Tire Jumpstart, Kids Sport, to name a couple of those. When it comes to evaluation, though, there has been very limited evaluation. One of our research colleagues, Dr. John Spence at the University of Alberta, actually was one of the key sparks for this evaluation, because he actually conducted a registration of the Children's Fitness Tax Credit and showed that it really had limited effectiveness when it came to enhancing access for people in low income. So really at this point, though, as researchers wanting to come up with what are some evidence-based alternatives to this kind of fiscal tool, there really wasn't a lot in terms of evaluation. We had a lot of stuff around usage, some very basic program stats in terms of registration, but very limited evaluation of fee assistance programs in Canada. And so really that's where we jumped at the opportunity. We had to apply for funding through the Local Poverty Reduction Fund funded by the province of Ontario. And this was an opportunity for us to partner with a research partner, so in this case the University of Toronto and the University of Alberta, to conduct a deeper dive, learn more about our own program, but also help to advance our collective knowledge on this topic in the country. So we really want to thank our funder for their support. And now I'm going to turn it over to Catherine, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the program.
Great. Hi. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. So I'm going to be taking you through a little bit about the project that we conducted in our evaluation of the fee assistance program. So some of the information that we had coming into the project was around, for example, the typical program usage. And we also have information on the typical types of memberships that were purchased. And as we mentioned, we had an interest in going a little bit deeper to find out how much people were redeeming and for what programs and so on. So you just see here a very broad overview of the types of programs that individuals are registering in. We see a large segment of youth participants as well as preschoolers. And then in terms of the types of programs that are being registered in, we've got a number of people participating in swimming lessons and sports, and then a number of other programs that people might take part in. On the next slide there, we've got the typical membership usage. So we see that we have a great number of adults buying memberships. We also have youth buying memberships. And then in terms of, again, what they're using those memberships for, we find that there's a good number of people registering in fitness programs and aquatics. So that gives us a very high-level view of what the types of programs people are registering in when they're using their credits. So the next step, I guess, for us was to dig a little deeper and conduct this evaluation of the Active Assist Fee Assistance Program. So the purpose of this project was to evaluate this program in determining how it's helping individuals and families in low income to access recreation programs. And so again, I would also like to echo Jennifer's comments and thanking our funding support for this project provided by the Government of Ontario's Poverty Reduction Strategy Office. So for this project, our aims were to evaluate the usage and non-usage of the program by individuals in low income, to identify opportunities to improve program awareness and to try to help increase the uptake of the program, and also to develop recommendations for future strategies to help enhance access to recreation among individuals in low income. So to do this, we actually proceeded in two phases. So we started by collecting anonymous quantitative registration data provided by the City of Mississauga's Recreation Division. And then in the second phase of our research, we conducted qualitative interviews with individuals who had registered with Active Assist. And we wanted to sample participants who had used their credits and also people who had registered but not used their credits to find out a little bit more about their experiences and what might be done to encourage them to actually take up and use the credits that they had registered for. So the main questions that we had when digging into that first phase of the analysis was looking at how much are people using, how many people are registering, how many people are redeeming, and how many people are actually going to come back and redeem these credits year after year. So to start, we took a large database of information and started to look at trends in registration. And so we can see from this graph here, we've got our series that roll from Series A that was spanned 2009-2010 up to Series F, which was 2014-15. And so to look at this data, we can see the blue bars that represent the number of people who registered in Active Assist in a given series or across that time span. And then the green bars represent individuals who registered and then also used their credits. So we can see that there are more people registering than using, but we find that about 68 to 74% of people who register also go on to redeem their credits. So the number of participants has grown over the years, and we also see that the number of participants redeeming their credits grows, but we find that it's about a 72% redemption rate across all groups of participants. The next graph that we have here for you examines those repeat users. So we were looking at the number of clients who registered and redeemed their credits in a given year, and then to see whether or not these people are coming back to, again, register the next year and then redeem their credits that next year as well. So, for example, if we look at that blue line at the bottom, that would represent people who started off in Series A. There were about 1,682 clients that we included in this analysis. And then of those clients who registered and redeemed their credits in Series A, we found that it goes down to about 50% who remained in the program and redeemed their credits again in Series B, and then again in Series C, D, E, and F, where we find that there's about a 50% retention rate year over year. So that of those 1,682 people who started in Series A and also redeemed their credits in Series A, about 109 of them registered and redeemed their credits again in Series F. So it seems that there's a fairly consistent trend in the retention rate year over year. It was between 47 to 53%. So we can extrapolate from this and think that if about 6,000 clients register and come back in the door and use any of their credits in a given series or in a given year, we anticipate that about half of them will continue to register and redeem credits in the subsequent year. So the next question we had was, well, when clients redeem their Active Assist credits, how much of their credit are they using? So what proportion of the credit are they redeeming? Are they redeeming all of it? Are they redeeming some of it? And what does that data look like? So on this slide, we have a graph of the amount of money that people paid in their total transactions within a given year, within a series. And so we can see that we've got the number, or so the dollar amount that people have redeemed off of their credits, as well as the amounts that clients paid. And we see that the Active Assist credits don't cover all the expenses that clients are incurring. So there may be memberships or programs that clients are paying for above and beyond the amounts that they are redeeming. But we find that the Active Assist credits account for about 85% of the client's total costs for physical activity and recreation programming. So one of the key points that we take away from this data is that it does appear that the Active Assist credits are substantially offsetting the costs of physical activity and recreation programming for Active Assist clients. They are paying for some of their costs, but it does seem that the Active Assist credits are covering a great deal of their activity costs. And then we also looked at individuals that are using more or less than 50% of the credits that are allotted to them. So of that $275 that individuals can redeem, we looked at the number of clients that are using less than 50% of their credit, and then also the individuals that are using more than 50% of their credit. So the findings from this data suggest that if a client used any of their credit, about 3/4 of them, about 72 to 75% of them, are going to use more than half of their credit amount. So we find that individuals, if they register for the credit and then they come back in the door to redeem their credits for any programs or memberships, it's likely that they're going to be using more than 50% of the amount that's allotted to them. And so that's looking at the group as a whole. So we do find that there's a substantial uptake of the amounts that are credited to people in their accounts. So digging a little bit deeper into this data, though, we wanted to know whether registration and credit use was different across different age groups. And so in the next graph, we see that we've broken down the credit redemption across the different registration groups that we have in our data. So we see when we look at the number of clients that are registered versus the clients that are redeeming credits, we see that there's differences depending on whether you're an adult, whether you're youth, whether you're school-aged or older adult. And so we find that of the adults who register in the Active Assist program, about 60% of them also redeem their credits. So this means they come back in the door at least once to use any of their credits at some point during that series. However, the proportion of youth or school-aged youth and also older adults who redeem any of their credits was higher, ranging from anywhere from 75 to 87% redemption among those age groups. So this data suggests that younger clients, those youth clients, and also older adults are more likely to redeem their credits after registering in the program, whereas adults are registering in the program but not taking it up to the same extent. So I think this is an important finding when we consider that across the board, we do have a fairly high redemption rate, but it does seem to be accounted for more greatly by those youth and older adult clients. And it seems that adults are a group that are having more trouble redeeming their credits or taking up those credits. And we dig into this a little bit more in our qualitative interviews later in the presentation. So just a little bit more information about that quantitative data. We conducted additional analyses to look at the amount used within each client group, and we found that youth and older adults are redeeming a greater proportion of their credits. So again, there's more youth and older adults redeeming over 50% of their credit amounts. And when we look at the actual dollar values that participants or clients are using, we find that, again, those youth and older adult clients are redeeming more of the credits that are assigned to them, that are credited to them. So at this point, we have a poll for you to respond to. So we just have a question here, if you can bring that up. So our question is whether or not you feel that the amounts should be increased for physical activity and recreation programming among youth, given that they are the ones who seem to be redeeming more of those credits. So you can go ahead and respond. So we have a little bit of fluctuation in responses. Give it a couple more seconds for you to reply. Okay, so it looks pretty consistent there. We've got about 60 to 65% of people feeling that the credit amount should be increased, potentially for youth, since they are redeeming those credits in greater quantities. So to summarize from our quantitative data, from our initial dive into that data, we find that the Active Assist credits do appear to offset the cost of physical activity and recreation programming. So clients are using the credits for registration in these activities, and it does suggest that if they had to pay for these activities on their own, it may not be feasible for them to do so. Credit use and retention from year over year is hovering around 50 to 53%. So this means that among clients who register and redeem any of their credits in one series, about 53% of them follow up with registration and credit redemption the following series. So this is useful information for planning and looking at the capacity for the program and how much the program might be able to carry year over year. Furthermore, adults are the largest group of participants registering in Active Assist. However, when youth and older adults register, they actually seem to be redeeming their credits in greater proportions and at greater amounts than the other age groups. So it does seem that adults are coming in and registering, but it's the youth and older adults who are taking advantage of the program to a greater extent than adults. So moving on then, we're going to talk a little bit more about the qualitative data and the interviews that we did with our participants. And so for this purpose, we wanted to learn some of the perceptions of the Active Assist program from people who are registered in the program. So we were interested in understanding what people felt were the benefits of the Active Assist program, what were the challenges of accessing physical activity and recreation programming, and whether they had any suggestions for the Active Assist program moving forward. So for this part of the project, we had 17 individuals who had used their credits and also 7 individuals who had not used any of their credits, although many of them had registered but used credits for their children and not for themselves. So the average age of our participants was 39.5 years. The majority of them had children, and we sampled individuals that represented the range of diversity in terms of ethnicity in Mississauga. So this is just an overview of our results. So I'll present some data related to the benefits of the program and then also some of the challenges and suggestions for improvement. So here we see as an overview, our themes from our qualitative data analysis were related to the program affording individuals access to physical activity and recreation programming. It also contributed to community involvement and personal benefits for participants. There were particular benefits for immigrants or newcomers to Canada that were identified. And participants also recognized children's physical, social benefits and also inclusion in physical activities. So to go into this a little bit more deeply, the first theme here is concerning affordable access to physical activity and recreation programming. So participants really spoke to this idea that the Active Assist credits made it possible for them to participate in physical activity and recreation programming or to make it possible for their children to participate in these activities. So one participant said if there's some kind of a recreation where parents can take the kids, then they don't have to choose between karate and groceries. So it was something where it helped individuals to avoid having to make hard choices about where to spend their money when it came down to registration and activities versus housing or groceries. One participant also said, if tomorrow I don't have this active assist, I think my children's activities would go down to 10% of what they do right now because I can't afford it. So that's the biggest benefit. So really participants spoke about just making programs affordable, and this is one of the primary benefits of these fee assistance programs. Individuals also reported a number of personal benefits and the opportunity to get involved in their community. So beyond simply accessing physical activity and recreation programs, they felt that it encouraged people to be active and to pursue things that they may be interested in and to build community and socialize. So one individual said, I find a lot of people are probably really isolated. When you're in low income, like there's only so many things you can do. You can't really go out and see friends because you can't go out and eat and things like that. So this is a great way for people to go out and do that. Another participant said that Active Assist kind of prevents you from being isolated because you tend to isolate a lot when you're depressed, so it's good to be out there. And I think that this quote is really important because it highlights the potential for an increased rate of mental health concerns and depression among individuals living in low income. And so the more that we can provide opportunities for these individuals to connect with their community and engage in recreation and physical activity programming, the more we can do to help to minimize those negative outcomes that might be associated with living in low income. So we felt that this is really important, and it extends beyond simply the health benefits of engaging in these programs. As I mentioned, there are also a number of benefits identified for immigrants or newcomers to Canada. And so one participant said, when I was new to Canada, I was worried looking at the programs, saying like, oh, it was $100, $120, it's so expensive. And I'm new, and I have limited income right now. I have my savings that I have to survive on until I get a job. So he described that when this lady told me about Active Assist, I was like, what, really? The city provides that for people who want to do something for their kids and families? Then I submitted my documents and I just enrolled, and then the next year also, since my income was still in that bracket, I applied again. So since then, there's no turning back. So this would probably represent one of our participants who was one of those year-over-year returning users of the program who found that there's a great deal of benefit in using programs like this in order to access physical activity and recreation programming for himself and for his children. And so we found that that also connected to that idea of connection and community involvement. And participants reported that when they were coming to Canada and trying to integrate within their societies and communities, that they found that these programs enabled them to make those connections with others. So again, it goes beyond simply the fee reductions or the reductions in price for these individuals, but also speaks to the opportunities that these programs may afford for individuals coming from other countries or trying to integrate into their new communities. Parents spoke frequently about benefits for their children, so physical benefits, social benefits, and also a feeling of inclusion. And so participants said that kids can meet people and feel equal because when they go to school, other kids are doing stuff and they may not be able to do that. Another participant said, it wasn't for me and my husband, it was for the kids. It was nice that we were included, but at the end of the day, it was all about them. And another participant said that before registering an Active Assist with school, their child would go skating, and her child didn't know how to skate and wasn't able to participate in that class trip to go skating. But now, because of being able to take skating lessons through redeeming Active Assist credits, their child was able to skate and then participate in those activities through school. We also found that one participant shared a story where her child came home from school and said that all of the other children in the class were participating in extracurricular activities, so soccer clubs and those types of things, and their child was able to participate in those discussions and conversations about activities that they also engaged in outside of school because they were able to participate as a result of redeeming these Active Assist credits. So in this case, children were benefiting by not being socially excluded from those conversations with their peers and not feeling perhaps some stigma that might be associated with not being able to participate in extracurricular activities. So again, we find that these benefits go beyond simple fee reductions, that it is really about inclusion and access, which aligns well with that physical activity and recreation framework that we mentioned earlier. So in summary, the Active Assist program had a number of benefits. Participants said it's one less thing to worry about. One woman said, in the moment that your life is changing, you have to get used to a new life. Financially, maybe you're not in the best situation for the moment, but you know what? Your kids, they don't have to suffer or sacrifice. So for that, I'm grateful. And another participant said, for people like myself, it helps people more than what the city thinks it does. And I think this really just speaks to the impact that these types of programs can have in the lives of the people that we are trying to help. So to turn our attention now to some of the challenges associated with the program, we did find that participants talked about a number of challenges in accessing the program or navigating the program. So I just wanted to share a little bit about those with each of you. So one of the things that participants said was that there was a lack of awareness about the program from the outset, or that they might have heard about it from word of mouth, but that they felt that increasing awareness about the program may help to increase uptake. They said, you know, the only weakness, if any weakness, is if you don't know about any of it, it's just out of sight, out of mind. But once you know about it, it's easy to keep doing it. So this speaks to the importance of advertising the program and targeting the individuals that you feel would best benefit from this program. Some individuals found that the classes that they might wanted to register in were not covered by the Active Assist program credits, or they might have experienced registration problems or website issues. And this is valuable information for Jen and Christina in looking at ways to streamline the registration process and to smooth out that process for the participants. This quote from a participant here said that when they tried to sign up for something online and they went to confirm the order, it was asking for a credit card and I wasn't able to use any of my credits. So the next day I went to the community center to sign up and it was already full. So we recognize that there are some challenges in registering for programs, and so it's important to get this information and feedback from participants in order to improve the program and the registration process. We also addressed the issue of stigma associated with the program, and so overwhelmingly, we actually found that individuals perceived very little or no stigma associated with registration in the Active Assist program. So the majority of the participants said things like these first two quotes here, where they said, they gave me a membership card like everyone else. I'm not stigmatized by having to hand over coupons or something like that. Another person said, the main important thing is nobody knows that, you know, we pay from our pocket or if we use the credit. We're having the same class with the other kids, no instructor, nobody knows, no teacher knows that you know how we pay, so we feel equal. So this was the majority of the responses that we received from our participants, although there was one participant who reported that they were concerned that in one interaction that they had with a staff member, that the staff member may have been condescending towards her as a result of being registered in Active Assist. And although they weren't sure if that was the case, they were concerned that that there may be a stigma associated with having to register in the program and being associated with that, because it is for individuals in low income. And so we recognize that that is an important issue, and that speaks to the importance of staff training, and we'll come back to that later in the presentation. And then so we also have some information here about some of the barriers that participants reported in accessing physical activity and recreation programming. So as an overview of some of the themes that people reported, they did discuss the cost of activity and recreation programs, childcare and transportation issues, especially in the winter, or seasonal issues in accessing physical activity and recreation programming seem to exacerbate some of those barriers. Participants reported a lack of motivation, just like we would see in a lot of other populations. And then some issues around class availability, so classes either being full or canceled, the timing and scheduling of classes not fitting with their schedules, particularly if individuals worked shift work or worked unusual hours or multiple jobs, then those could make it more difficult to register in some of the programming offered through the City of Mississauga. So I'll just go into a couple of details around some of these barriers to physical activity and recreation participation. One that was reported most frequently was around childcare and transportation. So individuals reported that if they could register for the credits, but they may not redeem them, because if they were to join those classes, then they don't have somebody to take care of their child. Another participant said, I don't have a car. So if you don't have a car and you don't have transportation, then you have to rely on public transit, which can be a challenge, especially in the winter. And so these tend to be some challenges that go beyond simply trying to address inclusion and access to physical activity and recreation through fee reduction approaches. We also have to recognize that there are additional issues that may need to be addressed in order to help people be able to redeem their credits. So at this point, I think we have another poll question for you. And so this question is for those of you who are working in physical activity and recreation organizations or government organizations, but do you have any type of transportation assistance for your clients to access physical activity or recreation programming? So in addition to any fee assistance programs, do you have any alternative means to help with overcoming some of these barriers such as transportation? Okay, so it looks like we've got pretty good responses there. And it looks like for the majority of participants, it says that they do not have transportation assistance for clients to access physical activity or recreation programming. So this is one thing that has been raised by our participants in our interviews, and it is an important issue that may need to be addressed at a global level or at a policy level in order to help facilitate access and inclusion in physical activity and recreation. And as we mentioned, the Active Assist credits do substantially offset the cost of enrolling and participating in physical activity and recreation programs. However, there are a number of additional or incidental costs that may add up that could also contribute to preventing individuals from participating in these programs. So participants said, for example, here, my son had mentioned last year that he wanted to do skating. I was like, oh, okay, well, they have skating. And then I realized, oh, wait, I don't have the extra money for the skates, right? So then that was kind of, you know, things are tight right now. So in this case, the extra equipment that might need to be purchased to participate in these programs could actually serve as a barrier to participating in these programs. Another parent said that she could put her child in 1 week here, 1 week winter, 1 week of March break, and like that, because there's a March break camp as well. But the thing is, yeah, you can't cover 2 weeks of camps with the $275 credit. So in this case, we have situations where individuals might have registered their child in one winter camp or a March break camp, but they wouldn't have additional credits to use during the rest of the year. So they're very vocal participants who were urging us to consider alternative opportunities for March break camp credits or camp credits in addition to yearly credits. So these are things you may want to consider within your own programs if the cost of camps may eat up a lot of those credits. It's also important to note that in this case, a number of participants didn't realize that you could take advantage of this physical activity and recreation fee assistance, so they as well as additional programs that might help to reduce equipment costs. So some of the other programs that we mentioned earlier that help individuals to access physical activity and recreation or to help cover equipment costs can be used in conjunction with Active Assist credits, but a number of participants didn't realize that, and so I think that's part of the communication process to help people understand that there's a variety of measures that they can tap into in order to reduce their costs and access equipment funding as well. All right, so individuals reported a number of suggestions for the Active Assist program. Some of these may or may not be feasible within your own programs, but these are the kinds of things that our participants were telling us. So one of the first things they said was to increase the credit amount. Although in our quantitative data, we know that not everyone is using all of their credits, we suspect that the people who volunteered to participate in interviews were probably using those credits to a fairly high degree, and so they were all saying, yep, we want more. So they would like us to increase the credit amount, but we also have to look at whether or not that's feasible within the carrying capacity of the program. They also suggested that instead of having a sort of a hard score for cutoff in order to register to qualify for Active Assist credits, that they had suggested a prorated credit amount based on income. So for example, if their income 1 year is slightly over the low income cutoff, but not substantially over that amount, they wouldn't want to be kicked out of the Active Assist program. They still wanted to be able to access those credits. So it's important to think about whether or not there could be a graded system or some sort of prorated credit amount based on income. As I mentioned earlier, they talked about the value of having camp credits for their children as well as yearly, year-round credits that could be used. Some participants didn't realize that their credits expired and that they wanted to get email reminders about how much is left, or perhaps a reminder when they log into the system online to see how much of their credit remains in the system. They also reported increasing program awareness, so to target particular groups who might not be familiar with the program. So looking at food banks or welcome houses where we might have access to individuals who might not be aware of the program. So thinking about targeted advertising could be useful in increasing program awareness. Some participants talked about the desire to roll over or transfer credits between family members, which has raised a discussion amongst ourselves about whether or not it would be feasible to allow, for example, a parent to transfer their credits to a child. Although this is appealing because this could increase the amounts that a child could use for registering in a number of programs, we also feel that it's important to balance that with highlighting the importance of parent physical activity and ensuring that adults are also engaging in physical activity that we know is important for their own health. So we are concerned about this issue of rollover or transfer of credits simply because we don't want to minimize the importance of adults engaging in physical activity themselves. And we also feel that it could be an inequitable form of provision of these activities because in some cases you might have a child with two parents who could roll over their credits, whereas another child may not have two parents to roll over their credits and support additional physical activity or recreation programming for that child. So although participants reported that they would like to be able to transfer credits between family members, we did have some concerns about whether or not that really would be an equitable way of ensuring that all members of the family have the opportunity to engage in physical activity. And then individuals also described wanting some more flexibility in the way that their credits are used. So they described wanting to have credits that could be used for single use or day passes because in some cases they couldn't register for an entire 8-week course because they might be working shift work for 2 weeks and then on a different shift for the following 2 weeks and not able to attend that course. So it's important to think about whether or not those credits could or should be used for single use or day passes or more flexible forms of credit redemption. So as a summary, we're gonna open it up to a bit of a discussion after we talk about some of our challenges and learnings through this process. But just to summarize, it appears that the credit program is an inclusive mechanism for increasing access to physical activity and recreation opportunities. It appears that the benefits of the program extend far beyond just improving the affordability of access to these opportunities and by increasing physical activity outcomes. We find that it also promotes personal and social benefits for families and children. It builds communities. It helps to integrate immigrants and newcomers to Canada. So we really feel strongly that these are important mechanisms in order to increase physical activity and recreation among individuals living in low income. We also find that barriers to physical activity and recreation programming are more than just financial issues. And so some of the barriers that are reported by individuals living in low income, such as lack of childcare, transportation issues, weather, and the cost of activities or additional costs above and beyond registration fees, might be particularly difficult to deal with for individuals in low income. And so we need to consider whether or not there are additional programs that we can put in place in order to mitigate or minimize some of those barriers that they may face in addition to the cost of registration. Okay, so I think we're going to switch gears now and talk a little bit about the challenges and learnings from this evaluation process.
Just before we get into it, thanks, Catherine. Just wanted to address a few questions that have kind of been popping up in that chat pod over there. One of the questions was, how did we land with $275? And it's a great question. Initially, when the program was established, the theory was that we wanted to be able to allow clients to have enough money to cover at least one 10-week program and 1 week of camp for children or membership. That's kind of where they landed on the $275 credit. We haven't had any significant increases in our program fees over the last few years, so there hasn't been necessarily a need to increase the $275 credit either. Another question was asked, why the set amount? And the theory behind the set amount is it provides equity to all of the participants who are applying. There's a bit of an ease of administration, so the way that we manage it in class is that IT has run a script, and that applies the $275 credit. It's drawn from a holding account specific for Active Assist, and then we write it off on an annual basis. So we don't budget for the program. There's no cost center holding these funds either.
And for us, because the way that our capacity is managed is through our policy, so council approves our capacity, and currently, I believe Jen's shared this already, we're sitting at 12,500 participants. So that by doing it this way with a set amount, it's clear to council, and it's easier for us to administer as well. I believe Brian asked a question too about how do we decide which programs are eligible or not. So that decision is based on essentially we exclude any of the higher program delivery costs, or programs with higher delivery costs, or programs that aren't administered through our class software. So for example, green fees at our golf courses are excluded, our Hershey Sports Zone leagues are excluded, and then private and semi-private lessons are excluded as well. And there's a few other types of programs that are limited. One of the interesting pieces is that we do include third-party delivery programs. So we have some partnership programs that are offered with external agencies. For example, our tennis program is offered with an external partnership, and we include those programs with the theory that we're going to absorb those costs, and we don't want our clients to be restricted. Tennis is a fairly basic recreational experience, so just because we've decided as a corporation to outsource it to another agency or another company, we don't want to limit our customers' choices in those areas as well. So coming back to the challenges and learning, so by partnering with the U of T, this analysis provided us with significant insight that we wouldn't have been able to necessarily draw on our own, and it helped us give direction in terms of our recent policy review that we're currently undergoing. So we're in a draft format. The changes haven't been approved yet, but this feedback that we got from our clients has been really helpful. And given the sensitive nature, we didn't want to reach out necessarily ourselves to survey the participants. There was by having a third party, having the university do it on our behalf, with that anonymity and arm's length, we were hoping that it would allow clients to feel safe to share their thoughts, that they didn't have to, that they could be honest and not have to fear of losing their subsidy with us. But some of the key challenges and learnings that we pulled out of this was that we had an opportunity to enhance the customer's experience. We were hearing some feedback that our staff maybe could benefit from some training. Basically, the application process was an in-person application where clients have to go into the community center with the forms completed and provide supplemental documentation to prove income and prove residency. So they were basically coming into our front desk counters, which are in public open spaces, and spreading out their personal life on the counters. And then the process was an additional kind of from an approval process. There had to be 2 staff who verified the income and signed off on it. And then the forms were sent basically to City Hall and processed centrally. Clients were finding it confusing. They didn't understand what forms they had to show, so there's a lot of back and forth, and it was often took clients a long time to get through the process as well. So then the other piece that we determined was that LICO can't be the only eligibility requirement. We've had a lot of kind of adaptations to the program where we've seen that there's a need to expand eligibility and that we can't necessarily be hard and fast on LICO, but we also need to be able to define those exceptions so that it's not kind of a free-for-all to the program based on our limited capacity. Speaking of capacity, we have been doing this program for 6 years, and in those 6 years we've increased our capacity four times, and we're, again, now this year we're approaching the 12,500 limit, and we know that there's more demand, and we also know that we haven't been marketing it as well as we could be. So what we would like to do is increase access, increase our volume of participants, but we need more space in the program to do if we're going to do that. So understanding that the premise of the program, basically the way that we sold it to council, was that we were using existing capacity in our programs. So the theory was that our programs aren't full. Hypothetically, let's say we were at 20% free capacity in our program. So the idea is that's how much we could take in active assist. So, but we didn't really have a formula in terms of how do you figure out what that threshold is? How do you figure out what you can bear as a corporation? We didn't want to expand the program so huge and then not be fiscally responsible in it. So what we did is we worked, or actually I'll get to that on the next slide, I guess. And then one of the other key findings was that although the program was filling, or it seems to be filling every year, and we're increasing capacity, not all of the funds are used. We found that concerning, and we wanted to find a way to try to encourage people who are accessing the program to actually use the money since it's there. And then it's also when the council is looking at, $3 million is allocated, how come it's not being redeemed? They'd like to know that as well. So those are some of the issues that we needed to look at. In terms of, actually, the slide's not changing. Hold on one second. Oh, there we go. In terms of the proposed changes of what we're looking at, I think somebody else is clicking here. Hold on. We wanted to improve the application process. So we're looking to have a centralized and electronic process now where clients can submit their application forms and the supporting documentation electronically through a secure connection, and then it'll get processed centrally, removing the need for them to share their personal information at the community center. We've also revised the application form to help them make it clear in terms of the process and make it clear in terms of what forms are needed to provide proof of income. And then the last piece there is we're looking to develop some customer service training, specifically around sensitivity in terms of working with diverse populations at a corporate level across the city. The other piece we looked at was establishing program capacity. And we went back and forth trying to figure out the best way to do that. But what we landed on was we used our current fill rates and the excess capacity in each line of business and multiplied it by the average revenue for that line of business per participant to land on a total value of free capacity. And then based on that total value, we divided it by 275 to determine how many participants we could support with our current state based on current fill rates. We also considered memberships in that as well. At our peak times, how much free capacity is there in memberships, and used a similar formula. And what we've discovered is that our true capacity right now is approximately 14,500 participants, which represents 8.6% of the LICO population in Mississauga. And our recreation's penetration rate is currently at 7% of Mississauga's population. So we're getting a little bit more, at 14,500, we would be getting a little bit more of this group of people than we do typically in recreation, which is a good news story. But so we'll be going forward recommending a program capacity of 14,500 participants for the next cycle. The other piece that we wanted to look at was updating our policy to increase access and utilization. So one of the things that we're proposing is expanding eligibility to include not only LICO, but children in care, so children in the foster system, refugees, independent youth, independent youth of no fixed address. As well as there'll be a disclaimer for consideration on a case-by-case basis for compassionate consideration. So knowing that there's those one-off situations, a family who might have entered the shelter system, and we want to be able to provide them access to the program if it's a sudden onset of financial crisis. We want to be able to support them. Another interesting piece that we're going to be proposing is to help with the volume of people that are getting credits but aren't using them, mostly adults. A lot on our application form, it asks to identify who the adults are and then the dependents in the family. So by default, all the clients get subsidy. But there is an opportunity for them to opt out if they don't want it. But the reality is if somebody's offering you money, then you're likely going to take it just in case. But as the program keeps reaching capacity, we need to be able to, or we hope to be able to use those credits to support families that need it and want to spend it. So in order to encourage that, we'll be implementing a 6-month expiry for those who have not redeemed or activated any credits. And then as the Active Assist program capacity is reached, it's going to allow us to utilize those the expired credits year to date to increase our applications. So where the capacity might be 14,500, if we've had 2,000 expire within 6 months, then we can increase by another 2,000 and issue those in that year. We know that 29% of the clients aren't using any of their funds, and then most of those being, 40% of those being adults. And our current policy also states that programmers are supposed to cancel programs that aren't meeting the minimum number of paid registrants. So we're proposing to eliminate that because it's not a practice that's happening, and we don't want Active Assist customers to experience having a canceled class just because there's not enough paying customers. So we're really taking kind of a macro approach to how we're administering the program. It's not, we're not looking at it on a program by program basis. It's more high level in terms of what's our overall capacity in our programs and what's the overall capacity of Active Assist as well. And then now I'm going to pass it on to Catherine, I believe, to facilitate the discussions.
Hi, great. So I'm just mindful of the time, so this is just a reminder that the presentation will be uploaded and available afterwards. So if any of you do need to leave, you can still catch up on the information at the end of the presentation here. And there is also a summary report that is available for download for you as well with some of the key points from our presentation. So I'm also happy to have Jennifer and Christina also join in if there's any pieces in the discussion that they'd like to add to. But I think we're just sitting here to reflect on what the benefits were of conducting this evaluation, and then also where we're headed in the future with it. So I think one of the things that we identified was the importance of evaluation. And I think from what I understand from the City of Mississauga's perspective, there is a bit of a risk in inviting a third party in to come in and ask your clients what it's like to be in their program or what are some of the challenges. But it also poses an opportunity for a number of benefits in order to learn how we can improve the program, not just show that it's working, but also to show how we might improve it and make it better. Christina or Jen, any additional comments on that one?
Yeah, I think that that's really where any evaluation like this, we just felt because this was such a gap in the whole sector that it was really important for us to take this step. And I think the concept being is that it may find information that we don't necessarily like. There's certainly lots of things, but I think the concept of being candid and open about it is really where you can have the interesting conversations about how to move forward and improve. The only other thing that I just really wanted to skip to before we close the call is really, I think, the idea of around evaluation in general, or just the learning that we had in terms of doing evaluation of your own projects. So we were lucky enough that we had a grant opportunity and we were able to forge a partnership. But I think that those shouldn't be barriers to you doing your own evaluation, and we do recognize that, you know, it's not like this is a core function sometimes of a lot of staff that are involved in program delivery, but there certainly is a landmine, a gold mine, not landmine, gold mine of data available just through, you know, your registration programs, through class. Really, it was great to just, there's evaluation all around you, and I think being able to use your existing data to couple that with the conversations that you have with your staff around planning was just a really good practice. So even without going out to the participants, we had a lot that we could just do within our existing data that could have really resulted in a lot of improvements. I think the other piece was around privacy, and I think this was one of the limitations that we've had, is that it's not like we could easily just access people. We do want to protect the confidentiality and anonymity of our clients. So we don't have permission to just call out to everybody. We don't have the ability to generate a list of everybody who's on via assistance. The way we had to recruit here was really through indirect participation or indirect recruitment. We had a lot of people that certainly wanted to tell their story, but definitely not reflective of everybody in the program. So in the future, we've actually added a box to our program registration fee that would just, participants could provide us with permission to contact them if we did want to find out more information about the program. And then finally, really in terms of working with a research partner, that really did add a lot, not in terms of just the new ideas that they generated and the expertise that they brought to the table, but the neutrality of it. So especially for the participants, knowing that they could talk to somebody who wasn't involved with the city, I think it really provided an opportunity to get some better data than we would have had. And even if there's not a post-secondary institution in your exact location, definitely we encourage you to reach out to universities and faculty members, people who are doing research in these areas, sport, physical activity, recreation. If they're not themselves interested, there's definitely a lot of networks, and they can absolutely be a key resource to you to help connect you to people that may be able to support you in doing your evaluation. That's really it for us in terms of the webinar seminar summary. I think that we've got the chat that will stay open, definitely open to being contacted if people have more questions. But thank you very much for coming and participating and listening into this evaluation report.
Thank you. And at this point, we also want to mention we do have one final open-ended question. So if any of you would like to give us your comments or questions, or also if you have any suggestions or advice based on your own experiences, we do have a poll question there for you. And we'll also look at the comments in the chat pod and use those to also inform our future discussions. But if you do have any comments or questions for us or any advice for the City of Mississauga or other communities implementing these programs, we'd be happy to hear that information from you. So just on the next slide, I'm just going to skip ahead here. I do want to thank everybody again. We would again like to thank the funding that was provided for this research from the Government of Ontario, the Local Poverty Reduction Fund, and also the support that we had from the City of Mississauga and also from all of the participants who also engaged in this research with us. Okay, so it looks like there's a question about asking for if there's more information on how we administer the program. So, Jen, I wonder if you can field that one.
I think Christina, do you want to give it a go?
Sorry, I just had to unmute here. Probably if there's more questions about the administration, you can reach out to me directly. I'll include my email address on the chat window.
Great. And then I believe my information is also provided there on the website if you're interested in looking for opportunities to connect around evaluation. So I'm just having a look at some of the questions there. I think a lot of the questions seem to be around so the administration of the program and the sort of the cost recovery of the program. So it sounds like that's a popular topic, which is good to see. It sounds like there's a lot of people implementing or looking at implementing these types of programs. And so again, Christina and Jen would be happy to help you in assessing those kinds of things within your own organization, I'm sure. So we just have a couple of more comments coming in on the chat pod. So we'll just wait for those to come in. And it looks like there's a review of the program going on in London, which has come up with similar barriers and challenges, which is, I guess, good to hear that there's similarities coming up, although difficult if there are challenges and barriers that keep coming up over and over. So we'd be happy to connect with you outside of the presentation to find out more about your evaluation. So please do get in touch with us. So we'll keep the lines open a little bit longer to see if there's any additional questions. And so for those of you who are interested, we do have the Active Assist summary report available as a PDF file to download. Also, so that you're aware, we will also be looking at publishing a summary report of this. And so if you are interested, you can contact myself, Catherine, or Jennifer or Christina, and we can share that information with you when it is available.
There was a question about whether or not this program will be transferable with class replacement. We're investigating that as part of our replacement procurement process.
And I just wondered, Jen and Christina, while we're getting the last couple of questions in, one of the questions is about how do we convince City Council to buy into these programs? So I wonder if you can share your experiences with that, or if the additional information here about some of the benefits for community and inclusion also help to strengthen the case for these programs.
Well, I'll just take a little stab at this answer, because I think one of the things about it is definitely, you have to really understand the context of your community, and I think that that's where, as a growing municipality and certainly a very large city, it's a new city, but it's becoming very large, and that means that there's just a lot of the concept of low income is actually something that I think we've got a lot of evidence to show that we can't just think of, we're here for all residents, and the concept of having to think about our evaluation as more of a balanced scorecard kind of approach, that there's certainly a need to generate revenue in terms of services, but there's also a need to balance that out with utilization and ensuring that your programs do reflect the community that you are serving. So for us, in that case, we were able to be able to tell that kind of story. I think our counselors really understood the context that we were working in, and they saw the need to ensure access and inclusion just because of the importance that recreation plays in the quality of life for people. So in our case, in any kind of good business case, you're able to present, the evidence contextual to your jurisdiction, and I think coupling that with things like this that really talk about how other people are not just doing it, but that they're experiencing good results when they do, I think adds to all of our collective business case. So we hope that maybe this will help you guys in some of that conversation that you need to have, but definitely I think you all have very contextual information that will work for your decision makers.
Excellent. Okay, well, it seems like we've kind of come to the end of our presentation. So I would like to thank everyone for attending, and also to Jennifer and Christina for helping to present this information. And we would also like to thank Jennifer Pelletier for helping to moderate and run the session for us. We couldn't have done it without her. And so again, thank you very much. And if you would like more information, please feel free to follow up with us. And we would like to work with you to implement more of these things in more communities, again, with the ultimate goal of increasing physical activity and recreation access for individuals in low income. So thank you.
The host has left the meeting, so at this time, the meeting will come to an end.